The summer sun blazed high over the fields of rural Georgia as Elijah stepped off the old pickup truck. His hands were calloused, his jeans worn thin at the knees, and his boots coated in the reddish dust that clung to everything out here. Just 19, Elijah had grown up fixing broken tractors, welding busted gates, and listening to his father's soft wisdom under the hood of whatever machine needed fixing that week. Today was different. He had been called by Wilson Tech, a high-end agricultural machinery company known for its cutting-edge harvesters and cold customer service. One of their brand-new machines had broken down on a wealthy CEO's commercial farm. Elijah's small repair business had gotten the call, likely a mistake, he figured, but he took it anyway. Money was money, and his father always said, "Never let a suit scare you, son. They put their pants on, just like we do." When Elijah arrived, the security guard looked him up and down. "You the mechanic?" the guard said, half a laugh in his throat. "Yes, sir," Elijah replied, standing taller. After a few calls, they let him in. The CEO, Richard Coleman, stood by the broken harvester in an expensive suit that clearly wasn't meant for the outdoors. He squinted at Elijah, clearly unimpressed. "You're the one they sent?" Coleman asked, frowning. "Yes, sir. I'll need about an hour." "Looks like it's a sensor issue," Elijah said, already kneeling by the machine. Coleman scoffed. "Try not to make it worse." Elijah didn't respond. He'd heard worse growing up. But as he got to work, something strange caught his eye, a small etching on the inner panel, the kind his father used to leave behind as a signature. A little carved EJ next to the serial number. His heart skipped. That was his father's mark. What was one of his father's handmade parts doing inside a multi-million-dollar Wilson Tech harvester? He glanced back at Coleman, who was now busy shouting into his phone, completely unaware. Something wasn't adding up. Elijah wiped his hands, stood up, and looked out over the field. His father had worked on something big once, something he never talked about. And suddenly Elijah wasn't just fixing a machine, he was about to uncover a secret that could shake the entire foundation of this company. Elijah's hands trembled slightly as he ran his fingers over the carved initials EJ, clear as day. His father, Earl Johnson, had always been modest about his past. He fixed things, loved the land, and rarely spoke of the years before he opened their small garage behind the farmhouse. But Elijah remembered one night years ago when his father had come home late, muddy boots thudding on the porch, his eyes distant. That night he'd muttered, "Never trust a man who smiles while stealing." Then he never said another word about it. Elijah returned to the job, but his thoughts were miles away. 30 minutes later, the machine came to life with a deep mechanical hum. Coleman clapped sarcastically. "Well, I'll be. You actually fixed it." Elijah stood, wiping his hands. "I recognize this part," he said, pointing toward the exposed panel. "It's not standard." "Wilson Tech." Coleman raised an eyebrow. "You an engineer now, kid?" "No, sir," Elijah said calmly. "But I know my father's work." Coleman's face changed. A twitch. Subtle. "But there. Who's your father?" "Earl Johnson." Coleman took a step back, visibly uncomfortable for a second before recomposing. "Never heard of him." Elijah didn't push. Not yet. As he gathered his tools, a man in a crisp white shirt walked up, holding a tablet. He looked like someone higher up, clean, sharp eyes. "You did the repair?" the man asked. "Yes, sir. Follow me. Mr. Coleman wants someone to look at another unit." Elijah hesitated, then followed. They walked past the gleaming tractors and high-tech harvesters toward a restricted-looking hangar. Inside were rows of prototype machines, but Elijah's eyes locked onto the corner of the room, a disassembled engine with familiar carvings along the chassis. There were more EJ initials. His father had built parts for these. "All of these?" The man turned to him. "Your father ever worked for Wilson Tech?" Elijah stared hard at the engine. "I don't know. He never said." The man nodded slowly, then tapped something on his tablet. "You may want to ask him," but Elijah already knew something had happened. Something buried. And now, without meaning to, he was digging it up. Not with a shovel, but with a wrench. And someone at the top wasn't going to like it. That evening, Elijah sat on the porch swing, the sun melting into the horizon behind the fields. His boots were off, his hands still smeared with oil, and his mind racing. Earl sat beside him in silence, sipping sweet tea, his gaze steady on the land. Dad Elijah finally said, his voice low, "Did you ever work for Wilson Tech?" Earl didn't move, didn't blink, just sipped his tea. "I saw your mark. On a prototype engine. On a working harvester." Earl's eyes closed, his chest rising with a deep breath. "I did," he said after a long pause. "But it wasn't like they tell it on their brochures." Elijah leaned in. "What happened?" Earl looked down at his hands. 30 years ago, before I had you, I was part of a team that designed what would become Wilson Tech's first autonomous harvester. I built the core components, the manual overrides, the safety systems. It was my dream, my life's work. "So why'd you leave?" Earl's voice dropped. "Because they stole it. Coleman's daddy, Leonard Coleman, took the plans, filed patents under his name, erased my records. I was just the mechanic on paper, nothing more. No credit, no royalties, no future." Elijah's fist clenched. "And you just let it go?" "I had to. We had no money for lawyers, no power. So I walked, came back here, started over." Elijah's mind spun. That meant the company's core technology, everything it was built on, was stolen from his father. "They're still using your designs," Elijah said. "And they don't even know who I am." Earl finally looked at him. "And that's your power, son. You walk in quiet, and they never see you coming." The next morning, Elijah returned to Wilson Tech's facility with a different plan. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore. He entered through the back gate again, this time invited. Mr. Davis, the man with the tablet, met him at the door. "We'd like to hire you full-time," Davis said. "Your work is impressive." Elijah smiled politely. "I'll think about it. But first, I'd like to see your archives." Davis blinked. "Archives, engineering logs, component patents, anything from the early models. I want to learn." It was a risky ask, but Davis, curious and unthreatened, nodded. "Fine, I'll get you clearance." As Elijah walked down the hallway toward the restricted data room, a storm was forming, not in the sky, but in the halls of Wilson Tech. He wasn't just a farmer's son. He was walking into the lion's den with the truth in his hands, and soon the lion would know his name. The archive room was cold, silent, and smelled of old paper mixed with server heat. Elijah's boots echoed as he stepped past rows of filing cabinets and blinking terminals. A clerk handed him a key card and mumbled, "Section C, lower level." "Old engineering records." He nodded, palms sweaty but steady. Downstairs, the lights flickered faintly. Dust floated in the air. Elijah scanned shelf after shelf until he found it, Model HX01 development files. He pulled the binder down, heart pounding. There it was. Blueprints, schematics, diagrams. And in the margins, handwritten notes labeled EJ. His father's handwriting. Diagrams bearing initials, annotations, and even a rough draft of the harvester's control panel, identical to the one in today's top-selling model. He flipped to the back, a dated memo from Leonard Coleman, the former CEO and father of the man running the company today. It read, "Ensure Johnson's name is removed from all files before final patent submission. Final version will be credited to L. Coleman and R. Daly." Elijah's jaw clenched. This wasn't just stolen work, it was erased legacy. He scanned everything, photos, PDFs, and technical logs onto a drive, tucked it safely into his jacket, and walked out with calm, measured steps. But as he exited the building, he saw Richard Coleman waiting near the company fountain, arms folded, smirking. "I hear you've been snooping, farm boy," Richard said. "I've been learning," Elijah replied coolly. "You're just your daddy's shadow," Coleman snapped. "A glorified wrench monkey with dreams too big for your boots." Elijah stepped forward, chin high. "Maybe, but your billion-dollar machines are running on my father's work. And I've got proof." Coleman's smile faded. "You stole from the wrong man," Elijah continued, "and now the son you overlooked is going to expose it." By nightfall, Elijah had uploaded the evidence online, engineering forums, patent offices, independent journalists. The truth spread like wildfire. By morning, news headlines read, Wilson tech empire built on stolen black inventors' work. Public outrage followed. Protests, investigations. Investors pulled out. Coleman's face vanished from the company site. Weeks later, Elijah and Earl stood together at a press conference, side by side. Earl finally recognized Elijah no longer invisible, not just the farmer's son, but the man who brought truth back home, and the world finally listened.